But Jules diffuses the situation, allowing the two thieves to keep the money from the other customers, and he lets them leave. Jules and Vincent go on to meet Marcellus at a bar where Marcellus is ordering a now aging Butch Coolidge, played by Bruce Willis, to intentionally lose his upcoming boxing match. Marcellus is betting big money on the other fighter. It seems that while delivering the briefcase, after he's done that, Jules then leaves the gang to go, as he says, wander the earth like Caine in Kung Fu. The following night, Vincent purchases heroin from his drug dealer, Lance. He shoots up, then drives to meet Mia, or played by Uma Thurman, at the Wallace house. They eat at a 1950s themed restaurant, participate in a twist contest, which they win. They return home, and the sexual energy between them is dangerous. But while Vincent is again in the bathroom, agonizing about whether to sleep with Mia, Mia finds his heroin, mistakes it for cocaine, and snorts it. She passes out from an overdose, and Vincent rushes her over to his friend Lance's house, where they revive her by injecting her heart with a stab of adrenaline. Vincent and Mia agree never to tell Marcellus about this incident. The next night, Butch the boxer double crosses Marcellus by killing his opponent in the ring. He's bet money on himself and will collect a big payoff in Tennessee. He joins his friend Fabienne at a motel, planning to flee LA the next morning. But Fabienne has forgotten to pack the treasured gold watch. Returning to his apartment the next morning to retrieve it, Butch encounters Vincent, who's been staking out Butch's apartment in order to kill or capture him because he double-crossed Marcellus. Marcellus himself is involved in the stakeout now that Jules has left the hitman business, but he's off getting coffee. Butch kills Vincent with a machine gun left in the kitchen. Vince is in the bathroom again, and Butch recovers the watch that he so treasured. But while returning to the motel, Butch encounters Marcellus, and Marcellus chases him into a pawn shop. The shop owner, Maynard, captures them both at gunpoint and gags them in the basement. Racist Maynard and his evil accomplice, Zed, take Marcellus and anally rape him. Butch somehow breaks free and kills Maynard with a samurai sword, freeing Marcellus, who shoots Zed in the crotch. Marcellus calls Winston Wolfe to come with a blowtorch to finish off Zed. He orders Butch to tell no one about this shameful incident and to leave Los Angeles forever. Butch picks up Fabienne, and they ride off on Zed's motorcycle, which is named Grace. They are free and will collect $1 million or so in Tennessee for betting on Butch to win the boxing match. Okay, that's the plot. 9 people die in this movie, but is it a comedy? Comedies are supposed to be distinguished from tragedy by happy endings. Does Pulp Fiction have happy endings? Surprisingly, given the violence and gouts of blood, it certainly does. Most clearly, Butch and Fabienne ride off happily on the motorcycle to go get their $1 million payoff from the boxing match bet. But also, Jules gives up being a hitman and sets out to wander the earth. He's happy. Mia successfully hides her adventure with Vincent from her husband, Marcellus. Bonnie's husband, Jimmy, played by Tarantino himself, escapes Bonnie's wrath by having Mr. Wolfe quickly clean up the murder mess at his house. Marcellus Wallace takes violent revenge on the rednecks. Pumpkin and Honey Bunny pull off their heist at the Hawthorne Grill, and Jules lets them get out alive and with the money. Happy endings all around. Only everybody escapes. Only the charismatic Vincent has an unhappy ending, shot dead by Butch. But then the audience gets to see Vincent restored to them. He's resurrected at the end of the film. There he is, having breakfast with Jules in the Hawthorne Grill. And Pulp Fiction ends with Vincent and Jules having dealt non-violently with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, strolling off together to deliver Marcellus's mysterious briefcase to him, their mission a success. So our film is structured into a series of happy endings, just as Some Like It Hot was. For people who took the Noir class in the spring, Think how different these happy endings in Pulp Fiction are from the tragic endings of Double Indemnity, or Sunset Boulevard, or Vertigo, or Chinatown. Another way this is a comedy is Tarantino's liking for almost all the characters he makes in the film. That is, all the characters are likable to him, and he makes them likable to us too. Tarantino does this through their ordinary words. He's a master of dialogue, and one of the things he does in this film is violate the movie principle that dialogue should only exist for the purpose of fostering the plot going forward. That is, motion pictures are pictures, dialogue should be at a minimum. But that's not true in Pulp Fiction, where dialogue is used to create character, and the characters are likable characters. This is most obviously true with Vincent and Jules. They're cold-blooded killers. We see them kill four people. But at the same time, they're clumsy softies, interested in hamburgers, who are afraid of Jimmy's wife Bonnie coming home and finding a bloody mess at their house. And Jules is the philosophical force in the film, spiritually troubled by his profession, opting for compassion and mercy toward those who are weaker than him, and that's almost everybody, including Vincent. Mia is a forceful person and clever. Honey Bunny really is in love with Pumpkin. Butch and Fabienne are honest and sweet lovers. Butch is completely different with Fabienne than the tough guy boxer in the outside world, and she is an unsullied dreamer. It's always a good time for pie, and she provides Butch with a true place of solace. Marcellus Wallace is basically a just ruler, which is why he lets Butch go. Only the two violent rednecks, Maynard and Zed, are despicable, and they both end up dead. In other words, all these characters are likable, and basically Tarantino created their likability through dialogue with them speaking. So going back to our course in the spring, was Double Indemnity replete with likable characters? Was Sunset Boulevard? Was Vertigo? Was Point Blank? Tarantino is compassionate to the audience, allowing us to luxuriate in all these happy endings of his likable thugs, while allowing even Vincent, killed by Butch, to be resurrected for a happy ending at the Hawthorne Grill. Again, this is the opposite of the cruelty with which Hitchcock treats his characters and the audience in Vertigo. Tarantino is compassionate to his characters, who he also makes likable. He wrote the script. He created their likability. And I'd go even farther. There are three storylines in Pulp Fiction, and each one ends in not just a happy ending, but a redemptive ending, a redemptive act. Vincent saves Mia's life by injecting her with a syringe of adrenaline. Butch saves Marcellus Wallace's life from the two rednecks and gets to go free himself from Wallace. Two redemptions for one act. Jules saves Pumpkin and Honey Bunny's lives. He doesn't kill them, which he easily could have. By the way, in the early version of the script, he does kill them. And Tarantino backed off from that. And not only does Jules and Vincent then stroll out of the coffee shop triumphant, but Jules will now walk the earth as a sort of holy person. So we've got a lot of happy endings in the film. And more than that, and that's why it's a comedy, but we also have redemptive endings all the way through. To be sure, there's a lot of violence and a huge amount of blood. I know some people will find this objectionable and will object to the injection of comedy into all this violence. And Tarantino was no stranger in combining humor and violence. In his first Hollywood film, Reservoir Dogs, 1992, there's a 5-minute torture scene done to the musical accompaniment of the cheerful 70s pop song Stuck in the Middle with You. That scene injured Tarantino's reputation and he has never really recovered from it. He was also criticized for the ultra-violence in his later hit Django Unchained, 2012. Critics warned that the triumphant violence at the end of Django Unchained, and it's really triumphant, it's really violent, that might inspire mentally unstable people. Uh, uh, Django Unchained came out just about the time of the Sandy Hook kindergarten massacre. But Tarantino's answer was, quote, I'm not going to be handcuffed by what some crazy fuck might do who sees my movie. So he's defiant about the violence. But Pulp Fiction itself, it could have been worse. The violence occurs either outside the frame or Tarantino shoots it in an oblique way. When in the basement, Butch slices Maynard with his samurai sword, the first slash happens in a flash and there's no blood, which there certainly would be. And the second slash, the kill slash, is below the frame line and unseen. You don't see it happen. In the apartment scene, the kid called Flock of Seagulls is dispatched in a long shot, the shooting a shocking surprise, but accompanied by no gore. When Jules and Vincent kill Brett and the fourth man who emerges from the bathroom, the camera stays on Jules and Vincent, on the killer's shooting, not on what happens to the victims. That's a directorial choice, an editorial choice by Tarantino. He focuses on them shooting, not on what actually happens when the bullets hit. We don't see Butch beating to death a man in the boxing ring, although that supposedly happened. But the accidental shooting of Marvin in Jules's car after the apartment scene, that is very messy, and Jules and Vincent end up covered in blood, as do Butch and Marcellus down in the redneck's basement. So in Pulp Fiction, Tarantino clearly wants to shock, but he gets the shock he wants, not so much through sheer gore, there is some, but not as much as it could have been, but by placing the violence suddenly in the midst of humor, in the midst of humorous dialogue. Pulp Fiction actually depicts, if you think about it, a very nasty world, a film noir gangster world. But this is also a film with no female nudity, no violence against women, in which interracial friendship is celebrated, in which there are two strong black men, Jules and Marcellus, the strongest males in the movie. I think the women are strong too, though I expect that's a controversial statement. But Mia is certainly a forceful person. Bonnie, who we never see, is nevertheless fearsome. She's Jimmy's black wife. Even dreamy, innocent Fabienne, who tames ferocious Butch, is an impressive figure. In a sense, and Tarantino would hate this, actually, when you look at those elements, Pulp Fiction is pretty square. As square in its own way as our next film, Fargo. But maybe it's the case that comedies are often square. And although Tarantino does continually confront the audience with sudden swerves, so that it never knows what to expect, it's not that Pulp Fiction is totally unstructured. It is structured. And Tarantino is explicit how he organized the narrative. It was through a series of couples, one after the other, as the subjects of the story. So Pumpkin and Honey Bunny are the couple in the prologue. Vincent and Jules are the couple in the morning hit story. Vincent and Mia are the couple in the dinner date story. Young Butch and Captain Coons at the center. Adult Butch and the female taxi driver. Adult Butch and Fabienne. The two horrible rednecks, Mason and Zed. Butch and Marcellus against them. Butch and Fabienne escape Los Angeles, ending with Vincent and Jules together again versus Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, with everyone escaping alive. Viewed this way, Pulp Fiction is put together like Lego block construction of couples. It's hard to remember now, given Tarantino's later career, but Pulp Fiction was only Tarantino's second movie as a Hollywood director. Reservoir Dogs, his first film, had been a low-budget independent production called an indie. And while it was a critical success, it was not a commercial success. And it could happen in Hollywood that a young indie director's sophomore studio film, a film that attracted the studio funding, that studio film failed, and that was the end of a career. We know that Tarantino would go on to a long and prominent career in Hollywood. But in the autumn of 1993, he was only 31 and didn't know whether he would ever get another chance at a big time production. And as a result of that, he desperately threw into Pulp Fiction everything he had, a chance to make mini films in all the genres he loved. What do I mean by that? That Pulp Fiction is also filled with different genres, and it switches genres sharply and without warning. That's part of the fun, part of the shock. So the prologue at the Hawthorne Grill and the ending there at the end of the movie with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny make up a complete caper movie, a heist movie. That is the robbery of the coffee shop. The morning hit that follows the prologue is a classic buddy movie, Vincent and Jules. Then come Vincent and Marcellus's Wife on a Date, which is a romantic comedy. The Gold Watch story of Captain Coons, which follows that, is a war movie. And then Butch and Marcellus end up as POWs, just like Butch's father and Captain Coons had, but with a happier ending. As for the Bonnie situation section, it's a classic domestic situation comedy. I gotta clean up this mess before the wife gets home. Classic situation comedy, except in this case, the mess is a bloody corpse. All this is Tarantino having fun while making Pulp Fiction into a tour de force. This brings us to Tarantino himself, a very odd character with an unusual life story. Like I said, he was only 31 when he wrote the script for and then directed Pulp Fiction. He was brought up in LA suburbs, by a single mother, but really he was brought up by the TV she placed in front of him and which acted as his babysitter while he did his homework. I did the same thing. He's a movie geek who never went to film school as Lucas, Scorsese, and Spielberg did. Instead, he spent his young adulthood educating himself in a video store on his own. The difference can be seen in the tone of Tarantino's films. He fell in love with the black exploitation films of the early 70s, like Shaft, and trash films such as John Boorman's Deliverance, 1972, which his mother took him to see when he was only 9 years old, if you can imagine that, and which he got to essentially redo with Mason and Zed in the pawn shop. He liked trash because it had energy. He hated European art films as gutless, and that's his entire approach. After all, the film Pulp Fiction, he's saying it's trash, but what gives it trash its power is its energy. So Tarantino never went to college. He never went to film school. In fact, he never even finished high school. He found it boring and dropped out when he was 16. He was a working class person from Downmarket, Torrance, just south of LA. What happened was he soon found work at the best video rental store in Hermosa Beach, the Video Archive. The Video Archive had a huge stock of videotapes of Hollywood movies with lots of trash alongside the classics. The store also had an early big screen TV, and he and his fellow clerks used to study the films and replay them over and over on the big screen TV. And that was how he was educated in movies, by watching movies over and over, the same movie over and over on the big screen TV, so he could see how things were done. So given that background, he naturally had ambitions to be part of movie making. In Pulp Fiction, even Jules the Hitman knows the ins and outs of film production, while Mia is a Hollywood wannabe failed TV show actress. The theme of the fabulous restaurant Jackrabbit Sims, where Vincent and Mia go on their date, is dedicated to 1950s Hollywood films. Pulp Fiction is set in Los Angeles, and Hollywood permeates everything. Like Billy Wilder, Tarantino started out as a screenwriter, not a director. And like Billy Wilder, Tarantino as a screenwriter was amazingly successful in an amazingly short time. He sold 2 screenplays to major Hollywood players almost immediately, so unheard of, really. Both scripts dealt with crime. Both films dealt with couples on the run, as with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny and Butch and Fabienne. Both screenplays became notable films. The first was True Romance, with a couple on the run with a mysterious suitcase, and one tremendous scene, a monologue by Dennis Hopper. And that was followed by the absolutely notorious Natural Born Killers, a real wild ride directed by Oliver Stone. And so what you have is someone whose career is a lot like Billy Wilder's, very successful, very right from the beginning. Tarantino's Pulp Fiction project was originally funded by the actor Danny DeVito, who loved the script. And Tarantino paid tribute to this support by naming the charming hitmen in the film Vincent and Jules. In Danny DeVito's comedy Twins, 1988, the 2 twins are named Vincent and Jules, played by Tiny DeVito as one twin and giant Arnold Schwarzenegger as the other twin. No doubt this was lost to the audience, but it's an insight into Tarantino's devotion to film industry inside jokes. It's a fact that Tarantino draws his material not from real life experience. He really doesn't have much, but rather from his stupendous knowledge of movies. So Pulp Fiction is a movie. In Pulp Fiction, he's taken scenes from other movies and remade them. This has led to charges. He does this all the time. And this has led to charges that Tarantino lacks originality, that he's a repository rather than a creator. He's a plagiarist. I think that's unfair. For Tarantino, the sampling from other films is a form of play. And if the audience is knowledgeable about film, and he's only interested in people who are knowledgeable about film, then they can play along with him. So I'm going to give you 3 striking examples of that sampling. First, there's the mysterious Watson glowing golden yellow in Marcellus Wallace's stolen briefcase. This image is stolen from the famous Robert Aldrich film noir Kiss Me Deadly, 1955, another film noir set in Los Angeles. And there, the mysterious briefcase glowing yellow, it's glowing yellow because it contains fissionable atomic explosive. And the film ends with it exploding in a blinding apocalyptic flash. Meanwhile, the code to opening Marcellus's briefcase is 666, the name of the beast in the apocalypse. Second, in the Academy Award-winning drama The Deer Hunter, 1978, Christopher Walken won an Oscar for his portrayal of an American soldier who was psychologically devastated by having been a prisoner of the Viet Cong. Tarantino says he was obsessed with The Deer Hunter when he saw it as a teenager. He would have been 15. And so he got to film the POW experience, shared in detail again, by the same actor, Christopher Walken, now as Captain Coons, in an astoundingly long soliloquy to the young Butch in Pulp Fiction. It's a weird centerpiece of the film. He got to replay the stuff he saw as a kid, or remake it. Third, Tarantino always loved the famous 3-way standoff in the graveyard at the end of Sergio Leone's great Western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1968. and he thought it was one of the greatest sequences ever filmed. Clint Eastwood, as the man with no name, emerges triumphant in the deadly shootout. And so Tarantino couldn't resist staging a version of this at the end of Pulp Fiction. In the Hawthorne diner, Jules has his gun on Pumpkin, Honey Bunny in turn has her gun on Jules, and Vincent in turn has his gun on Honey Bunny. But while in the Clint Eastwood Western, there's dealing in death, in Pulp Fiction, everyone walks away from the tense three-way standoff alive and happy. Again, that's why Pulp Fiction is a comedy. It has happy endings all the time. And then there's Pulp Fiction's most famous film reference. John Travolta's Hollywood career had been made in the great disco dance film Saturday Night Fever, 1979. Travolta's career had languished since then. In the 80s, he made a number of bad choices with mediocre films. And his role in Pulp Fiction, in fact, resuscitated his career, which enabled it to go on for another 30 years. And so in Pulp Fiction, Mia, played by Uma Thurman, gets Vincent to join her on the dance floor for a sensuous high-speed twist contest. Travolta is back dancing. The audience bends forward, watching wide-eyed, and they win the contest, going home with a trophy. I should say another aspect of sampling is the scene where Vincent saves Mia's life by injecting her with a syringe of adrenaline. That's taken from a Martin Scorsese film that was a documentary. So that the most bizarre thing, you say that could never happen, actually did happen in real life. How they filmed that, by the way, was they had the syringe in Uma Thurman's chest, sort of, and Travolta pulls it out, and then they reverse the image so it looks like he's smashing it in. It's all artificial. But then there is the issue of race. This is where the most serious criticisms of Pulp Fiction have come to be centered. When the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung visited the United States in 1907, the stiff European was surprised to find that, quote, Americans walk like Negroes, talk like Negroes, and laugh like Negroes. Jung, as a European, a stiff European, saw that America was already a miscegenated society. So Pulp Fiction has not one, but two interracial marriages, Mia and the formidable Marcellus, Jimmy and the formidable Bonnie. In one of them, Tarantino himself plays the husband. And Jules and Vincent are clearly old and friendly comrades and comfortable with each other. Vincent, though he's white, has been impacted by Black culture. His cadences in the scene when they're talking about hamburgers are Black cadences. And of course, he's the henchman of a Black boss whom he respects and, more importantly, obeys. In all these ways, Pulp Fiction paints a comforting picture of an integrated, miscegenated American culture. This was noted with approval by certain Black intellectuals such as Stanley Crouch. Similarly, Samuel L. Jackson Jules is the moral center of the film. He's the only figure who has an arc of character development. Thoughtful and chivalrous, he's the one who breaks free from gangster life. But he's as natural and comfortable with white cultural tropes as Vincent is with Black cultural tropes. Fonzie from the 1970s TV show Happy Days, Kane from the 1970s TV show Kung Fu. They're part of his culture. He knows the process of experiment by which TV shows are approved for TV production. He's an LA guy. Jules is such an unforgettable character that it was hard for Samuel L. Jackson to play someone else convincingly, though he's appeared in dozens of films since. It's made his career too. The image and character of Jules, Samuel L. Jackson, is a culturally powerful legacy from Pulp Fiction. So far, so good. Tarantino's depiction of a miscegenated American culture has won the approval of important Black writers, but it has also won him the contempt of more radical Black writers, such as Bell Hooks, who sees Pulp Fiction as a white fantasy of reconciliation. In particular, she objected to the pawn shop scene where Butch plays the typical white savior of helplessly anally raped Marcellus. Marcellus couldn't do it himself. It takes the white guy to save the scene. To this, I guess one can say that once freed by Butch, Marcellus shoots the redneck rapist with a shotgun and calls on Mr. Wolf to bring a blowtorch. He's back in control. So there's a point here about white savior trope, but it's not simple. And, you see that white savior trope also in films like Lawrence of Arabia, where Lawrence is a better Arab than the Arabs, or Dances with Wolves, where the white guy turns out to be a better Sioux than the Sioux. Most importantly, critics have especially castigated Tarantino for his relentless use of the N-word in the film, and it is relentless, and including in his own mouth 3 times as Jimmy in the film. It's most often used by Black people, and especially by Marcellus Wallace, and one should note which white people don't use it: Vincent, Mia, and Butch. But in Jimmy's mouth at the house, the N-word is referring to the dead Marvin, whose head has been off. That's a very uncomfortable scene to watch. It was uncomfortable in 1994. It's uncomfortable now. And critics who therefore see Tarantino as a racist at heart point to his overkill use of the N-word again and again in his later films. In the Southern Gothic Django Unchained in 2012, and even in the Western The Hateful Eight in 2015. He loves that word too much. Samuel L. Jackson, who has always championed Tarantino, warned him about the Jimmy scene and convinced Tarantino to give Jimmy a Black wife in order to soften the impact, which Tarantino did. He wrote in Bonnie. But Jackson also warned Tarantino about pronunciation. Never use the N-word as ending in ER. You can use it, but only at ending in AH, as used by Marcellus and his henchman Paul at the bar. That was acceptable. Tarantino didn't do it in the scenes with Jimmy. He's using ER. If people are offended, I don't want to defend Tarantino. He loved to shock the audience, and he's defiant about this. But I do think the situation in Pulp Fiction is complicated because sometimes in the film, the N-word is used by Black people, not only among themselves, where it's just word among friends, but also directed at both Butch and Vincent, who are white people who are part of Marcellus's criminal organization. So when Vincent and Jules are cleaning up the car of blood at Jimmy's house, Jules says to Vincent, "Fuck N-word. Where did you do to that fucking towel? It's still bloody with Marvin's blood." Jimmy's wife, Connie, will find it and they'll be held to pay. There, the N-word seems to be used to express a sense of camaraderie. In the bar, Marcellus explains to the boxer Butch that he has to throw the upcoming fight. Marcellus has set up a big bet on Butch's losing the fight. He explains to Butch that it's not an insult to his manliness, as Butch clearly thinks it is, simply a recognition that Butch is aging, isn't ever going to be a champion, and he needs to recognize reality. Here we see Marcellus not just giving an order, he tries to persuade, he understands Butch's angry, prideful psychology. Marcellus is a good ruler. He gives Butch a wad of cash and then asks Butch, "You my N-word? That is, are you my vassal?" And Butch whispers, "It would certainly appear so." Marcellus then summons Vincent to him. "Is Vincent Vega in the house? My N-word. Get your ass over here." Vincent goes over and they warmly embrace. Here, the N-word directed at Vincent is meant to express camaraderie and familiarity, as with Jules. But here too, it means vassal. Yes, it's a term of friendly familiarity, but it also indicates subordination. Whatever Tarantino intended with all this N-word, Samuel L. Jackson defended it as part of the gritty underworld street milieu of the film. I think in Jimmy's mouth, in Tarantino's mouth, it is very uncomfortable. It's really going too far to shock people. And he didn't have to do it. And then you can say, why did he do it? And there's another aspect too. Pulp Fiction was filmed in Los Angeles just a year after the enormous May 1992 Rodney King race riots in Los Angeles. Those riots left 63 people dead and caused $1 billion in property damage. The riots were set off by a private person's home filming of the beating of Rodney King by police officers. This private person was actually home filming the making of Arnold Schwarzenegger's epic Terminator 2, and he just happened to glance over to his right and saw the cops beating up Rodney King. So one of the things you can say about that sequence is that LA is a movie town. Yet there's no sign of the volcanic Rodney King violence in the comfortably miscegenated world of Pulp Fiction. It's Tarantino's comfortable vision, a vision reasserted in the crime thriller Jackie Brown 3 years later, where there's an interracial romance involving Pam Grier, the queen of the blaxploitation films of the early 70s. There, too, you have a dominant Black man, Samuel L. Jackson, in the Marcellus role, his sexy white girlfriend, Bridget Fonda, in the Mia role, and his white criminal comrade, Robert De Niro, in the Vincent role, all living happily together. So you can understand why critical race theory people would say this is just a white fantasy of a happily miscegenated society. And it's being imposed on the American audience. Okay, so that brings us to reception, which, as you can see, was divided. It was screened for the first time in public at the famous Cannes Film Festival in spring 1994. The judges panel was headed by Clint Eastwood himself, yes, and they awarded it the grand prize, the greatest prize, the Palme d'Or. They also wanted to give John Travolta the award for Best Actor. But the tradition at Cannes is that no one film gets more than one award, so they gave it the award for Best Film, even though the judges panel wanted to give John Travolta the award for Best Actor too. But critical approval was one thing. Commercial success was another. Reservoir Dogs had not been a commercial success. And Kevin Smith, another video store movie geek like Tarantino, a director in his own right, thought that no one would ever see this off-kilter Pulp Fiction except the 5 people who saw Reservoir Dogs. But Harvey Weinstein, yes, Harvey Weinstein at Miramax loved the film and decided to risk opening Pulp Fiction nationwide all at once in autumn 1994 at 1,300 screens. And Miramax actually spent more on the national advertising campaign that preceded the opening than the movie actually cost to make. The reason that Miramax could risk spending huge money on a national advertising campaign and opening Pulp Fiction nationwide in 1,300 screens was because it was financially backed by Disney, which had recently bought Miramax. That is, Pulp Fiction is a Disney production. The campaign went forward even though Jeffrey Katzenberg, the head of Disney, a person of middle-brow tastes, really disliked the film and was offended by it, but he understood that there was a good risk that it would be successful. And of course, it turned out to be a successful financial gamble. Opening in October 1994, Pulp Fiction was the top box office draw for week after week for a full month, beating out its feared rival, a Sylvester Stallone action movie. And Pulp Fiction stayed in the top 10 box office for 6 months. Ultimately, it made $105 million in the US and another $105 million overseas. This was a $210 million return on an original $9 million investment. Huge. And so it wasn't only the virtues of the film, such as they are, its high energy entertainment value as trash. Energy was always the thing that moved Tarantino. It was its colossal financial success that made Tarantino into a huge figure in Hollywood. Follow the money. Hollywood, follow the money. And he sees himself as the leader of the edgier successor generation to middle-brow mainstream Steven.
So didn't come with any instructions?
What's so I'm coming to the end. So Pulp Fiction was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Film, Best Director Tarantino, Best Actor Travolta, Best Supporting Actor Samuel L. Jackson. You have to wonder about that. Why wasn't Jackson nominated for Best Actor? Why is it Supporting Actor? Best Supporting Actress, Uma Thurman. But in the spring of 1995, it was competing against the unthreatening feel-good movie Forrest Gump. The result was that only Tarantino took home an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. It was aced out of all the other nominations. Well, feel-good movies always do well in Hollywood at Oscar time. That's the nature of the industry. But really, who thinks about Forrest Gump today? Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. I'll take a look at chat and see what questions are asked, and then come back for discussion.
Thank you, Art.
Okay, I'm back, and I'm sure people have questions. But I want to start by saying, so next week we're doing Fargo, and I don't feel called upon to send a trigger warning to people, warning them about the stereotype depiction of people from Minnesota. So what's the difference that I felt it necessary to send a trigger warning about Pulp Fiction? The difference is, it just wouldn't occur to me. So no, nobody's going to be offended by the depiction of people in Minnesota. Okay, so questions.
There's 3 chats for you, Art.
Oh, yes, the first was, this was another example of sampling, was that the cleaner, the Harvey Keitel character, Winston Wolfe, was actually taken from a previous movie made the year before called Point of No Return. So the question is, does that make Tarantino a kind of plagiarist? And the answer is, well, Kathy says, I view it more as a homage to film and roles that people play. And of course, it's homage. He's soaked in movie history. And so he plays with these tropes and redoes them. You know, The Couple on the Run is not an original plot device. On the other hand, Humane Gangsters was pretty new. And the depiction of both Marcellus and Jules, these are real people, not black stereotypes. They're people with virtues and vices, but ultimately more virtues than vices. And some people say these are cartoon figures, but I think they work very well the other way. And somebody says, Oh, what did Tarantino know of Santa Cruz in picking such a nonviolent place and harmless mascot for Vincent's T-shirt? I'm sure he knew a lot about Santa Cruz. He's a California guy. Everybody knew about the banana slug mascot. Um, I think he thought it was funny, and it's a funny T-shirt. Uh, but it does raise, the question. Jimmy, uh, who originally was going to be played by Eric Stoltz, but that didn't work out. Uh, that Jimmy is actually a hitman. In the backstory, Jimmy is a hitman who's now retired from the business. So he's a hitman who went to Santa Cruz, which is another inside joke given Santa Cruz's countercultural reputation. Um, so everybody knows. I have to tell you, Santa Cruz people, everybody knows about the banana slug. So any, I'm sorry, Californian people know about the banana slug. So it's an inside California joke.
Lots of chats, Art, and I think Joan
Uh,
might have a question for you.
yeah, go. Okay. Any
Are you
speculation?
you calling on Joe or Joan?
Joan, you.
Okay, me. I
Yeah,
have an introduction, not a message. My introduction is at the break, I went in to talk to my husband, who's just all agog at that lecture, Art. He just was so excited about it. And I said, okay, but I want to tell Art first that you, Lou, are a retired professor. He's done a lot of research, he's published papers. So if he says your research is good, damn it, it's good. Okay.
Okay, well,
Thank you,
good.
Joan.
well,
Thanks, Lou. Thanks,
yeah,
Lou.
I want to follow that up. Thank you, Joan. But I
Okay.
do think you've done a tremendously deep job of wonderful research on this, and I just loved it. I love the movie, by the way. It's the funniest movie I think I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, Vicky's gonna hate you.
Um, I I read a lot of reviews of the movie after I watched it. And one stuck in my craw, which really puts what you have to say in a context, because it was Stanley Kaufman in
Yeah,
the New Republic, and I bet you know that one.
yeah.
Um, he, wow, he says the worst thing about this movie is its success. Yes, he's looking at the movie with a moral eye and thinking that it awards permission for the society, the viewers, to commit these crimes and to hell with
Hmm.
it's, and I don't think he got the idea that this was a comedy.
Yeah.
Honestly, he says, I'll quote him here, some of the action strains belief. Yes, and I'll give you an example. He says, after the heroin and adrenaline scene,
Yeah.
Travolta drops Thurman off at home as if it were just an ordinary date. Nothing happened. I mean, this is absurd. It's just, and it's the combination of the humor and the violence, judged with a moral eye, that I think is, and he's complains time and again that it was unrealistic. The movie was unrealistic. Now that's the heart and soul of comedy, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he says, we never even know what's in the briefcase, for God's sake. And also, Butch wipes the fingerprints off of the weapon
Yeah.
and then goes and touches the doorknob and goes on out without wiping off the doorknob. It's like he missed, where was he? He missed the whole point. And I think there were a couple of reviews that I read also that were in the same vein, and I just didn't get it. This was a wonderful movie.
Well, that particular business about the doorknob, it's his apartment. What does it matter if his fingerprint is on the doorknob? So the gun is a different thing. But to complain about the absurdity of the story, you know, in Aristophanes' comedy Clouds, Socrates is depicted walking 2 feet above the ground all the time. Oh, that's absurd. Yes, of course, how dare he do that? His head is in the clouds. So how dare he do that? It's in the nature of comedy to be
Of
absurd.
course. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim, you've got your hand up.
Just a comment for the audience. There at the bottom of your screen, there's a function called React. If you press that, you can then do a virtual raise of your hand, which Art will see. And I see Richard has his hand up, for example. And so just FYI.
And somebody says, and we'll get to Richard, it's the case about Marcellus's organization that Jimmy is allowed to retire and that Jules is allowed to retire. I mean, I don't think that would actually happen in a real organization, but Marcellus is the just ruler. So he's all wise and he's compassionate with his people. And so when they're tired of it, he lets them go. And of course, that's unrealistic. Tell it to Kaufman. It's really unrealistic that a chief thug would operate that way. Richard.
Yeah, I found it interesting to kind of figure out the role of violence in this movie. My own background was a white upper middle class community, and I got all the way through college without having met a black person or person of color until I went off to medical school. My social Venn diagram did not overlap people who were killers.
Yeah.
But then I was, as a medical student, in the emergency room in inner city Houston, and I came across a man who'd been shot in the chest and was refusing to stay. In the ER, the surgeon said, well, it's only a small caliber bullet in his chest wall, so he can go, but you go discharge him. And here was this fellow who was not in a chatty mood, but this is 1958. He says, I'm going to go find the nigger who shot me. I'm going to cut him 4 ways, long, wide, deep, and often. And that was kind of my introduction to a world of people that inhabit the world I inhabit, but I never know about. And I was wondering to what extent the movie was meant to introduce us to a violent strain in our society that could be sitting right next to us in that nice little cafe, that little diner, in a booth, one booth away. There were 2 sets of people that are quite violent.
Well, I think the use of the N word was kind of revolutionary in the film in that, and it shows it has a certain authenticity among street people like that, street thugs like that. But it was very dangerous to do, I thought, and it still, I think, is offensive. But I would also say, I've told people about this. So my first wife's family had connections with the mafia, and they were ordinary people with us. So part of what's going on in the film is saying thugs can be ordinary people discussing the virtues of hamburgers. And that was something that had never been shown on the screen before, with Vincent and Jules discussing the Big Mac and discussing the Royale with cheese. And I think, and then what happens is after they get finished, the next scene is they're opening up the trunk and taking out their guns. And discussing in the same tone of voice whether they should have brought shotguns or not. So, and that's played for laughs. It's played for shock, but it's also talking about the violence that does exist. You're right. I mean, boy, that's a diner I wouldn't want to be in, right? There are two sets of killers in there. So,
Art, Susan Hansey has her hand raised.
yeah, Susan.
Unmute Susan, please.
I was really taken aback, and if no one's mentioned it, by the off-screen rape sounds and knowledge of what was going on there. To me, that was deeply, I guess you can't call it offensive in the context of this particular film, but I was really rattled by it. And I was surprised that no one has mentioned that as an isolated part of the film. I thought it was one of the standout scenes. Just the audio of it, and it was, the whole thing was just, to me, awful. I'm a little bit with Stanley Kaufman. I didn't read his New Republic review, but there was the moral me was offended by parts. I hated the movie, every bit of it. Just couldn't. I hated it. The only thing I liked was the final Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta verbal exchange, which I thought was wonderful. I was a little surprised at the very heavy Christian tone, but aside from any judgment about that, I thought that the whole scene was wonderful. But the rest of the film I found deeply offensive. I didn't like anything about it.
Well, you know, in the script, in the original script, Samuel L. Jackson kills both Honey Bunny and Pumpkin, and they changed it.
It was a wonderful scene.
Yeah, and he allows them to go, and then they changed it first to him fantasizing it that he's going to do it. Then they just eliminated it.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah.
Of course, you couldn't read. With Travolta, of course, I kept seeing him with Princess Diana and that twist scene, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to the rape scene.
The rape thing, I'd like to.
Yeah. Jamie.
Unmute, please.
There were two things that occurred to me. One is it reminds me a lot of the TV shows The Sopranos, which was not a comedy, and The Wire, and that you got to see people who are criminals really having regular lives, and you have a lot of sympathy for them in a lot of aspects. And the other, it almost felt like there were two parallel movies going on in this one. There was a violent movie and there was a comedic movie. And he just kind of interfingered them in ways that were very effective. But I really couldn't look at it. It was just the comedy part, like with Pop-Tarts springing up.
Yeah.
And he was even having Pop-Tarts when he knew people were looking for him. And then this very violent side. And it, like I could just really sort of dissociate a little bit from the violence and enjoying the comedy, and then also appreciate the way he was managing it in the violent part. Anyway, I actually really loved the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me because he was only 31 when he made this movie. So there's that. But he has a love of popular culture. So the Pop-Tarts are there because he just loves that kind of thing. Just like Fabienne loves blueberry pancakes. You know, it's just, these are ordinary people having the artifacts of American culture. Dolores.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the part where he had the single Bible quote. I don't find that religious at all. I think that was, my father was a redneck, and his terrible redneck, and his quote was the eye of the needle thing for a rich and a poor person, right? So that's how he justified the fact that we were so poor. But
About how did he
find it
interpret
hilarious.
How did he interpret the eye of a needle?
Oh, it was you know, a rich man couldn't go to heaven, so it was better that we were poor.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
What I love about that is that Samuel Jackson said that same quote and used it in so many different circumstances to justify what he did, as my father did. And he got it a little bit different each time.
Each time, right.
And the legs of that scene is indicated by the fact that Pete Hegseth actually used that misquote. It's misquoted, by the way.
Did he really?
Yes, he did. He
My
actually
God.
used it to justify what he was doing also. You know,
I mean, what Jules does with that at the end is he decides that he is the shepherd of the weak and the finder of lost children.
yes, that's right.
Of
That's right.
God.
And I think that Pete Hegseth had an entirely different take on that. But yeah, so I didn't find that particularly. Someone said the religious acts have bothered them. I think coming from a point of view of my father using that quote over and over again to justify, I think that was perfect that he picked that one and he used it over and over again in so many different scenarios, you know, to justify what he was doing. I loved the movie. I have to say that the violence did not particularly bother me. I found it almost vaudevillian in some respects. It wasn't at all like the violence, say, in Seven, for example, which would definitely help a serial killer get ideas. I didn't think that movie was like that at all.
I didn't mean to imply that there was too religious. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that.
Okay.
I agree with you.
David Thompson has a new book out in which he complains about the vaudevillian nature of violence in films that is a way of inuring us from what actual violence actually does. And even when it's presented realistically, it's istically not real. And if you saw it for real, it would be much more disturbing. So I think it is vaudevillian, and it's intentionally vaudevillian. When they start shooting, sometimes people in the audience in the apartment scene, people start laughing. So that's a kind of disturbing thing.
Where do you get to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with the torch scene at the end?
Oh, yes, that's right.
And you feel really horrible about yourself for laughing at that scene.
I don't want to pull my punches about Once Upon a Time. Golly, I'll just say I had a girlfriend who got picked up by Charles Manson hitchhiking.
Oh, yes. Well, I had a friend who
and her description of what was going on is pretty much what the film showed. She got out of there as soon as she could.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's his use of violence. I mean, what about I don't know whether people have seen Django Unchained.
Yes.
But the violence at the end of that movie is outrageous, really.
Correct.
Yeah, dozens of people are killed. But and you can sort of take the Stanley Kaufman line, oh, this is terrible. But yeah, somebody says Django is difficult to watch. The whole movie is difficult to watch. But it is an attempt in a vaudeville way. I mean, those characters, King Schultz and all those people, and Candy, the evil plantation owner, they're all vaudeville figures. And not based on reality, but based on other films. So that's one of the things that he does. Somebody said, one of the things that's very strange about the movie is that Vincent is always in the bathroom. And people have, and it never works out good for him. And people have said he does use the bathroom for reading. He's sitting on the toilet reading, and he's reading some kind of Pulp Fiction novel. But maybe it's that he's nervous about the job that he's doing. Otherwise, why is he a heroin user? But he's presented as a rounded picture of somebody. We don't think of hitmen as people having digestive problems, but he's able to do that also. That's a way, I think, again, of humanizing and being compassionate towards the figures. He likes these folks that he's created, and in a way that Hitchcock didn't like the people he's created. And he's merciful to Tarantino is merciful to the audience in a way that Hitchcock is not merciful to the audience. The other questions here. Tarantino's acting as Jimmy isn't very good. He's an amateur. Well, I don't know. It worked enough. He wasn't supposed to take that part. They had a problem. The original actor bowed out, so we had to take it as an emergency, and that's what he's doing. But I think he was warned by Samuel L. Jackson not to do what he did, which was to use the N-word ending in ER. And he just does it. He does it 3 times in 3 minutes. And it's really a shocking kind of thing. You know, he's a bad boy. He likes being a bad boy. That's part of what he's doing. And I would say, you know, comedies has its origin in being offensive. That's what was going on. A YouTube explanation was that as a heroin addict, Vincent suffered from one of the primary side effects, constipation. Oh, that's new. I didn't realize that. Maybe that's what's going on. That he's, because he's a heroin addict, he's constipated. I also have to say, after he buys the Madman heroin, the scene where he is injecting himself, and this is done in close-up, was shocking to me. To show that was shocking. It's one thing to show him kind of drowsed out driving the car, that's amusing. But to actually see him injecting himself at close range, in a hyper close-up, that was shocking to me, actually, that would be shown. But having said all of this, it's still a funny movie, and it's true that there are the two streams: the violent movie, which I think is vaudeville violence, and he could have made it much worse, and the comedy part, or even the humane part. Jim.
Thank you, Art. 2 quick things. Susan, I just wanted to confirm what you said, and I have the exact same feelings you expressed. It was the one thing about the movie that I just really did not want to see again. And his comment, it's going to be a long time before I'm okay, was pretty powerful. And but
I'm pretty far from being okay.
I'm pretty far from being okay. That line has stuck with me all these years, you know, and I was kind of almost afraid to see it again. On the lighter side, Beverly and I are wondering if maybe we missed something. What's in the briefcase?
Say that again.
What's in the briefcase?
Oh, nobody knows. That's the joke. It's a MacGuffin. It's what Hitchcock called a MacGuffin. It's something that's very valuable that everybody's chasing, and you never know what it is. That's part of the joke.
Exactly.
Yeah. Although it's glowing, and that is a reference to Kiss Me Deadly, the 1955 film, which is a classic film noir. Again, it's not the end of film noir. It's just another film noir in which it's actually nuclear material. And at the end of that movie, it explodes. And the movie ends in an apocalypse. So he's having fun with that. And if people don't know the reference, that's fine. It still works fine. But that's really, but he knows that there are movie geeks like me who are watching the movie and are going, aha, I know what that's a reference to. I know what that's a homage to. Yeah. We don't know what's in it. We never do.
Thanks.
Yeah. Although it's beautiful. Somebody says it's beautiful. And that's Vincent looks in it and he's stunned by whatever it is. So, but that's the joke. We don't know what it is. Oh, so there again, the glowing car trunk in Repo Man also. Yeah. I mean, it's filled with references like that. Richard.
Kind of curious about to what extent the producer of the movie was using it as an educational tool, sort of like a documentary about violence in our society that's all around us and we normally don't see it, in which case it would be possibly similar to going to the nature channel and finding out about zebras and finding out that there's predators and zebras that cause violence in the zebra family. In a way that's just educational, or is that reading too much into it?
Before I turn to Dolores, I would just say my reaction to that is that it is educational in intent, in showing what he believes society, a miscegenated society, looks like and would look like, and how there could be reconciliation, and the power, and acknowledging the power of Black culture over white people, which is what Jung saw. He was shocked as a stiff, cool European to see how Americans acted. And I think that that's what Tarantino was looking for also, as a kind of liberal, in quotes, educational experience. Dolores.
Yeah, the scene where they opened the case and it glowed.
Yeah,
that was actually to me right out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Do you remember when they
that's
opened
true.
and the Nazi goes, "It's beautiful," like that
Yeah.
with that blood in his eyes. That's immediately what I thought of versus anything
Yeah.
else.
It's Raiders of the Lost Ark also. That's also true. Yeah. But it fits better with Kiss Me Deadly because it's the same genre. But yeah, I'm sure people would have had that reaction too. Joan.
Art, last time you talked about how Some Like It Hot got better toward the last third,
Yeah.
and that there was a kind of a disconnect between Marilyn Monroe's ideas and Billy Wilder's ideas. And it seemed to all of us, I think, that Marilyn maybe began to get more of the upper hand because toward the end, it really got stronger and funnier. I have a question about this film. It seemed to me that Pulp Fiction started out stronger and tapered off toward the end. And maybe that was just my take on it, but I felt that it didn't hold up as well as it began. And unlike Sue Hansey, I really liked the film.
You could argue that the entire rape scene, the entire redoing of Deliverance business could have been cut from the film. It's really not necessary.
Yeah.
Except as a way of allowing Butch and Fabienne to get away from Marcellus without him killing them. But it is, I think it's a weakness in the film, but he couldn't resist. He saw Deliverance when he was 9 years old.
What was your comment about Deliverance again?
Deliverance.
I know the scene.
Yeah, this is the rape of Marcellus and the redneck thugs.
Okay.
Redneck thugs. It's right out of Deliverance. It's taken right out of Deliverance, and I think he just couldn't resist redoing it it had a huge impression on him when he was 9. I think you don't understand that. And that he just couldn't resist redoing it for fun.
Because otherwise it was just didn't fit to me.
No, yeah, it's not necessary.
Question from Vicky, Art.
Vicky, Vicky's now going to really lay into it.
No, actually, I didn't want to divert from the discussion of Pulp Fiction, but what you said at the top about why you didn't feel it necessary to warn us about the Minnesotans in Fargo interested me. I think to me it's very clear that the teasing about the accent of the northern states, and maybe I'm aware of this because I lived up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, heaven help me, for 4 years. So I'm familiar with the accents and the Swedes and the Finns, but that's all done affectionately. It's not done in any way to be cruel or and when you look at, I mean, Frances McDormand is brilliant in that movie. And what you look at what she quietly accomplishes, it's more about a woman and men and that kind of thing. So I think instinctively, most people, at least people like us, can feel when something is crossing boundaries or it is misogynist or racist, and when it's affectionate poking fun at characters or language of different states.
I mean, I think the issue is really race, and the fact that I had to send around a warning was an indication of how toxic race remains as an issue.
Well, look around us today. It is an issue. Yeah,
it is. So that was illuminating. That I woke up actually on Monday. Gosh, after taking a nap, I was, oh my God, I'm going to be showing this movie with the N-word. I better say something so that people understand I know there's a problem. Yeah. Dolores. So it's a difference, but although I think they're teasing, the Coen brothers are teasing that accent too. It's affectionate, but it's also teasing. And
well, teasing I think can be affectionate. So yeah.
I'm sorry, Vicky and then Dolores. Vicky.
Yeah. So the rape scene. The only thing I found incomplete and very disconcerting was that they pulled that guy they called the Gimp out of the cage, and he was all wired up like that, and then they just left him. I'm not sure why that was there. That part. What was Tarantino? Did anybody ever talk about that? What happened with that? Why Tarantino put that person in there and then just left him?
Yeah, he can be cruel. He thought it was funny.
There was nothing part at all. I mean, that was probably one of the more horrible scenes for me of anything, because there was no resolution to that. They just left that guy tied up like that.
Yeah.
Well, he was the incompetent guard. They had to have somebody guard him, and he was incompetent, which allowed.
Yeah, he was incompetent.
Escape. He allowed the escape. He enabled the escape, basically. I think that's what I thought.
Right. I think that this does have to do with the nature of Tarantino's approach to comedy, which we're also going to see in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that he is someone who has no boundaries. And that makes it difficult for some people, and for other people it's energizing or freeing to see. But Vicky's shaking her head. I know you're on the Kaufman side. I mean, of course the violence is immoral, and the blowing the head off of Marvin is taken as a joke, and then they say, well, now we have a big problem with all this blood on us, you know. It's just suddenly something that happens, and it's Tarantino's sense of humor. Yeah. Well, okay, folks. So see you next week with Fargo, which will be a lot more bland in some ways.
Thank you, Art.
Okay.
Thank
Great
you.
session.
See
Thank
you
you
all
all.
next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.